Hey everyone, I'm Barnyard from HalfKocked, and after 595 days, Game of Thrones Season 8 finally premiered, and oh man, oh man, it's been so long. It's been so long. We're just happy to have you back. But without any further ado, we're going to talk about Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 1, Winterfell. Now, I will be discussing and just talking about what happened in the episode. So if you don't want anything spoiled for you in that episode, please stop watching the video and come back after you did. But anyways, here we go. So first off, Game of Thrones starts off with a brand new opening title sequence. For the last 7 seasons, we've had a similar thing where it goes across the map and it shows Winterfell, King's Landing, the Wall, and whatever particular kingdom that will be focused on in that particular season. Instead, we got to see Winterfell. We got to see like the crypts of Winterfell. There was a new story told around the Crown, where I believe one of them showed Viserion burning down the wall. Another one was the birth of the 3 dragons. The Red Wedding, I believe, was another one of them. It's all, symbolic, it's nothing, plainly written out, but from what I've gathered, that's what they represent, so that's what I'm going to stick with. But yeah, so new opening, cool title sequence, and after that, we're shown of soldiers marching in the north. Daenerys and Jon have finally gotten back to Winterfell, and, they do this whole thing. Man, this episode was fanfare like a motherfucker. We had characters meeting for the first time, characters that haven't seen each other since episode 1, seeing each other again. Oh man, it was just awesome. First we have, Daenerys meeting, the Stark family and everyone from the north. It wasn't particularly, like a happy picnic or anything. But, it's still symbolic to see, Sansa and Dany, Bran and Jon seeing each other for the first time in fucking 67 episodes, something like that. Moving forward with all the reunions, later we have Jon and Arya meeting up under the old god tree, Weirwood tree or something like that. I don't remember what it's called at this particular moment, so don't hate me. But, they have a nice reunion, they hug it out, and they have a little discussion saying, Sansa doesn't really like Daenerys, and she's looking out for her family, and she's like, so am I. Or he's like, so am I. What others did we have? We had Tyrion and Sansa seeing each other since the Purple Wedding. Discussing, Tyrion saying to her that, people underestimated you, and just, enlightening stuff like that. And after all this, we see Gendry giving the Hound a custom-made axe made of dragonglass. And there we see Arya come down and, tell the Hound, hey, I'm here. The Hound be like, you left me for dead. Glad to see you alive still. And then, Gendry and Arya have a nice little, good to see you, you look good, all that junk. I mean, there was a lot of fanfare, like I was saying, a lot of reunions that people have been waiting years for, to see. We have Jon riding Rhaegal, I believe, is the name of the dragon. The green, not the green one, but the one that's not Drogon that's still alive. I think it's Rhaegal. But yeah. So, him symbolically riding the dragon named after his father. That's pretty interesting. Him and Dany go to this waterfall area where Daenerys says something similar to what Ygritte said back in like season 3. We could stay here for 1,000 years. And Jon gets a little, he has a little smirk. So, I mean, there's chemistry with the two, honestly, obviously. Then they share a kiss, And then we have a meme pop up where we have both dragons snarling at Jon while he's kissing Daenerys. And another meme that we have brought from this episode already is, people doing their own thing in Winterfell, and, they look over and Bran's just sitting there in his wheelchair looking at him. And he does this a couple times. I think first with Tyrion, then with there's probably another one before, but then Sam, and then the last one we'll get to in a minute. Jorah introduces Daenerys with Samwell, who in the previous season saved him from grayscale, the disease that turns your entire skin into a gray scaly situation that turns you into a monster. It's weird. And Daenerys is very grateful and yada yada yada, and he asks for a pardon. He's like, for what? I stole some books from the Citadel, and I also stole my family's sword, the House Tarly family sword. She goes, Tarly, Randall Tarly, and he's like, yeah. And pretty much she admits to burning him alive, which Sam takes. He takes as anyone would about hearing their dad, even though how much of a dick he was, getting burned alive by the supposed person that you're loyal to now. And then the bombshell drops about his brother, who he was more fond of, and he walks away, crying. And it's at this moment that Bran does his another, hey, I'm over here. And he looks at him and he says, we gotta tell Jon now. And he's like, you tell Jon, he's your brother. He's like, no, he's not. So Jon's in the crypts. I can't remember exactly who he was talking to or paying his respects to. I imagine it was Ned, his supposed father. But then Sam comes down and pretty much tells him. And Jon, what he pretty much says is, I don't want a crown. Instead of, the obvious realization that he's been boning his aunt. He's like, I don't want the crown. I'm like, I get that, that's the more noble thing to do, but you're boning your aunt at this point. And he's taking it. He's not even considering that part of the statement. So, Jon knows that he is a Targaryen, that he is the true heir of the Iron Throne. And that should play pretty interesting. That should be pretty interesting to see in the next episode, to see how that follows up. And on the other side of the world, in King's Landing, the Golden Company has finally arrived to King's Landing. Cersei is like, yay, I got my elephants. And then she's like, oh, we have no elephants. Damn. And Euron's being a dick, as always. He's playing a very risky game with someone who we all know has murdered people for much less. He's being arrogant. He's being sharp on with his tongue. Just whatever. They have sex because he's like, oh, I deserve something. Yada yada yada. And then my friend Daniel, he was pointing, or Daniel, of course. He was pointing out, oh man, the Queen had a badass line, even though he's in season 2. I don't know why he's sticking up with this. But what Cersei says is, if you want a whore, buy her. If you want a queen, earn her. And then she kind of contradicts herself by just giving up the puss anyway. And after they have sex, Euron's like, how was I, was I better than the Fat King? And she's like, you're disrespecting my late husband, yada yada yada. And then how about the Kingslayer? And she looks at him and he looks at her. And, like I was saying, he's being sharp and he's being, he's not caring about anything right now. He can pretty much get away with murder in his eyes. And yeah, so that was interesting. That was an interesting part of the episode. And, yeah, Cersei just being a bitch. Meanwhile, while Euron and Cersei are in bed, Theon is leading his little rescue party to save Yara, and that's successful. So, Yara is safe, and Yara is going to the Iron Islands. So, in her words, have somewhere for the Queen to flee if the war in the North fails. So, we have that. But on the other side, Theon is going to Winterfell to fight the dead. So, yeah, we'll be seeing him in Winterfell in a minute. And meanwhile, while Euron and Cersei are in bed, Theon is leading his little rescue party to save Yara, and that's successful. So, Yara is safe, and Yara is going to the Iron Islands. So, in her words, have somewhere for the Queen to flee if the war in the North fails. So, we have that. But on the other side, Theon is going to Winterfell to fight the dead. So, yeah, we'll be seeing him in Winterfell in a minute. Closing in on the show, we have the group from the Wall, from Eastwatch, Beric Dondarrion and Tormund, with a couple other people. I don't know who. They get to, I don't know what the name of the castle is, but it's where the Umbers are, and it's a ghost town, and there's blood, and it's not looking good. They go to investigate. They find Ned from the Night's Watch and a couple of other Night's Watch people, and they say, have you seen anybody? And they came across little Lord Umber. He's probably like 8 or something like that, and it's really sad to see a child go like that. But he's on the wall with something punctured through him to keep him on the wall, with a sign with a message, with like spiral like limbs, kind of like a clock, kind of like a flower. I don't know exactly how to do it, but it was definitely brutal. And yeah, definitely brutal. So House Umber is gone. And finally, the final scene, we have a mysterious rider riding up to Winterfell. He gets in the gates, and he gets off his horse, removes his hood, and it's Jaime freaking Lannister. The Kingslayer is in Winterfell. And just before the credits roll, we have another Bran moment where he's just sitting there looking at him. No emotion on his face. Jaime's like, oh, fuck. Pretty much, and that's how this episode ends. So overall, it was great, man. It's exactly the fanfare that we've all been waiting for, and I'm kind of glad that we got it all out of the way. It's so amazing to have this show back in. Obviously, no one can wait till next week. It's gonna be a hell of a roller coaster these next 5 episodes. But I was a very big fan of this episode. I'm glad they did it, and I'm glad they went ahead and got all this out of the way so we can stick to the main story. And that is my final thought about this episode. Perfect episode to start off the season, and I just can't wait for more. I'm Barnyard from HalfKocked. If you like this video, please leave a like down below. Comment down below, tell me what you thought about this episode, and tell me what you think is going to happen in the world of Game of Thrones in the next 5 episodes. And, of course, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Plus, press that little bell icon to get notified when more videos like this pop up. And you guys have a great rest of your Monday.